Thank you very much. Thanks for those of you who are here with your lunches listening, and for those at the back, carry on with your lunch. So, I'll be talking today about whose cognitive load is it anyway. Luckily for you, I'm not going to be trying to imitate the popular TV show and doing this talk in different characters or comedy situations. You're just going to get me. So who am I? My name is Paula Kennedy. I'm the co-founder of a company called Syntasso. We provide a framework and services that help organizations to run their internal platforms as products. And if you want to know more about that, you can find me later. I'll be probably hanging out for some drinks tonight as well. But for now, what am I going to be talking about? I'm going to tell you a story about how we've seen, over the last few years, the last number of years, we've seen an increasing number of tools and technology choices. We've also seen changes in our working practices. So we've seen suggestions of how to work better. And these two things together have led to an increasing amount of cognitive load on our developers. More recently, we've seen some patterns and some trends emerge that are designed to help us with this. So, we've heard about the focus on developer experience, providing a beautiful experience for our developers. And you might also have heard of the term golden paths or paved paths to production, a way of trying to make it easier to get the developer's code out into production. So the key questions I'm going to try to address in the next 20 minutes are, if we successfully reduce cognitive load for our developers, what happens to that load? Has it gone away, or is it now someone else's cognitive load? So the first thing you might be asking is, what actually is cognitive load? We've heard a little bit of talk about it already today. It's a theory that was first researched in the late 1980s, and there's lots of information you can find online. There's actually 3 different types of cognitive load, but I'm just going to start with a fairly simple definition. So the cognitive load involved in a task is the cognitive effort or the amount of information processing required by a person to perform this task. Sounds fairly straightforward. So why should we worry about it? Well, De Jong stated that cognitive load theory asserts that learning is hampered when working memory capacity is exceeded in a learning task. So in other words, if we have too much cognitive load, our working memory, the amount we can actually process, gets overloaded, and we struggle to complete the tasks that we're working on. So how does that apply to all of us in this room? Well, putting it simply, we work in a complicated space. I don't need to tell you all. There's lots and lots of tools out there, technologies out there. Sometimes it feels like just when you've learned one technology, along comes another one. There's always something new, there's always something shiny. Sometimes something comes along and it promises to make everything better. So going cloud native, taking advantage of all of the things available in the cloud to make life easier. But just as an example, this is the latest Cloud Native Computing Foundation landscape, which I just downloaded last week. Now, I'm not going to be the person that stands up here and criticizes the CNCF. I think they do a good job. But you can see from this image that there are just a huge number of tools and a huge number of choices that we have to handle. It's difficult to even understand all the options that are available to us, let alone making the right choices, and then learning those tools, and then figuring out how to bring them into our current tech stack, how to wire them together. It's just, there's an awful lot of things to think about. And this is just one example. I could have put up the AWS service list. But there's so many things that we have to worry about. And it's not just the tools and technologies. So we've seen changes in the ways of working, which mean new practices that we have to learn. Now, I don't want to dwell too much on kind of past, but you might have heard the term the wall of confusion. So where we had developers and operators in separate teams, devs would write the code and then throw it over the mythical wall to the operators who would be responsible for running it. Now, from a cognitive load point of view, actually for developers, that probably wasn't so bad, because all they had to do was write the code, pass it over, and then some other team would be responsible for running it, probably being on call for it, and it probably made life not too hard for the developers. But we've seen over the last few years like the problems that come from this pattern, particularly for the operations folks. So they're responsible for running that code, for making sure that it's up and running, even when they haven't written it, and they might not understand it. And typically they are on call for that code as well. The developers want to get more features out, so they're incentivized to go faster and to push out more code, with the ops folks who are responsible for keeping everything stable. So they're incentivized to not have features being released. And the two teams are siloed, they're not collaborating, they have different incentives, which leads to tension and friction. So, to solve that, in the last 12 years or so, we've seen the rise of DevOps. So what is DevOps? I attended the London DevOps meetup a few weeks ago, and Matt Saunders, who's here, he put up 3 different definitions of DevOps at the meetup, just to illustrate that this term has come to mean different things to different people. So preparing for this talk, I did some Googling of what was it originally intended to be? What were those early folks back in 2008, 2009, what were they thinking about when they talked about DevOps? And I found this lovely definition from Patrick Dubois. He basically said the DevOps movement is built around people who believe that the combination of both technology and attitude together can revolutionize how we develop and deliver software. Now, lots of people are going to have their own definitions about what DevOps means to them. Is it a job title? Is it a team? Is it a practice? For me personally, DevOps is really at its core about bringing developers and operators closer together, sometimes into the same team, so that the folks who are writing code are also responsible for running the code, so that they understand it. And I'm a huge fan of the DevOps principles around collaboration and around sharing. But if you're part of a team that's now being asked to use the best and shiniest tools available to you, and you're being asked not only to build the software, but also to run the software, that sounds like quite a lot of cognitive load on your plate. So what are we going to do about it? I mentioned at the beginning about a couple of trends we've seen emerging designed to help with this. So let's start by talking about developer experience, or DevX. So what is DevX? Here's a definition from James Governor from Red Monk, who said developer experience is about creating an environment in which a developer can do their best work. DevX, or DX, is the context in which developer productivity can be unleashed, in which individual needs can be successfully balanced with those of the team, which sounds awesome, right? So here's my developer. She's freed from complexity and toil. She is ready to do her very best work in this environment. And we know that she needs to have all the tools she needs to give her this best environment. This could look like the right abstraction levels, could look like automation, self-service, but everything that she needs to be able to get her best work done and deliver value then to her customers. So in other words, developer experience is about reducing cognitive load on developers so that they can focus on their task at hand, getting value to customers. But how do we go about doing this? And if we reduce the cognitive load successfully, where does it go to? I'm a huge fan of team topologies. They say beware when you meet your heroes, but I was very happy to meet Manuel here today. This is a copy of my book. I was actually going to bring it with me and ask them to sign it, but then I thought that was really embarrassing, so I didn't. But Team Topologies, fantastic book. If you haven't read it, you definitely should. They talk in the book about cognitive load. Manuel mentioned it just before. I'm not going to go into full detail about what that book covers, because that would be a whole talk on its own. In fact, it'd be a whole book on its own. But to try and summarize it in my own words, Team Topologies really talks about how to organize teams and how those teams work together and share information together so that there's clear responsibilities for each team, but reduce friction across the team boundaries so that value can flow between the teams. So why am I talking about this right now? I want to focus in on just one part of that model, which is the platform team. And this is where I've spent the large part of my career, platform teams, platform space in general. So let's define what we mean when we say platform. What is a platform? Well, This is my favorite definition of platform from Evan Bottcher, who said, a digital platform is a foundation of self-service APIs, tools, services, knowledge, and support, which are arranged as a compelling internal product. Autonomous delivery teams can make use of the platform to deliver product features at a higher pace with reduced coordination. Now, platform's another one of those words that gets overused quite a lot. But you'll notice from this definition, it's not talking about one specific technology. It doesn't mention Kubernetes or Cloud Foundry or Heroku. It's just a definition for a general kind of framework. Now, a platform can be a very huge, complicated system, and sadly, that's sometimes what they look like. Or it could be something very small. It could be just a small set of APIs that we give to developers to get the components that they need. But whatever the platform is made up of, whatever it looks like, we know it needs to provide a delightful developer experience. So here's my delightful developer experience. It's got unicorns and rainbows and sunshine. Now, as Evan Boch's definition said, we know the platform needs to be a compelling internal product that the application teams can use autonomously. They can self-service their way through it. Now, you might be thinking that DevX sounds like a great idea, and you might be wondering, what's the best way that you're going to actually get to do this? Now, the best way that my team and I know how to deliver this kind of compelling, delightful product is by a set of practices that we call platform as a product. Now, what's the definition for that, you might ask? This was quite hard. When I was trying to put a succinct definition of platform as a product, I couldn't really find like the one sentence that captured it, so I ended up making it up myself. And if you have a better definition, then please come and find me afterwards. But I made this one up. So what did I say? I said, a platform product meets the needs of the application team. Platform team needs to apply a product mindset, that's pretty critical, to the platform. This could include having a product strategy for your platform, iterative development, frequent releases, a focus on developer delight, and it might include metrics such as user adoption. Not just build it and they will come, but build it and make sure people are using it. And it might include measuring the kind of the cost savings or the revenue being generated by parts of the platform. As I said, if you have a better definition for platform as a product, please come and talk to me. But if we get this right, if we can do platform as a product, what does it look like? Well, the State of DevOps reports from 2020, 2021 make lots of reference to platform as a product and applying the product mindset. But there's a few things that if you can get this right, these are some of the outcomes that you might get. So the application teams will want to use the product because it's been built to meet their needs. And it makes it easier for them to get their work done. And if it's done right, the platform can help organizations to scale DevOps. So, the question I have now, is it enough that the platform meets the needs and the desires of the application teams? Not quite, because there's a few other business concerns that we need to incorporate into the platform. So another buzzword we hear quite a lot is these golden paths or paved paths to production. I don't have a definition this time, I just have a beautiful image. But if you want to read more about this, Charity Majors has a great blog from 2018, and there's some great information out there from the Spotify engineering team. But really, there's a couple of good things that offering golden paths can do. One of them is to encourage the application teams to use some of the tool set. Instead of them having all of these thousands and thousands of options, if you build some paved paths, you can suggest that they can use just some specific tools that are supported and recommended by the business. It can reduce the sprawl of choices that they have, reduce their cognitive load, and can help standardize some good practices across the different teams. Another thing that these paved paths can do is to build in guardrails that the business requires into those paths to production. So it could include compliance, security scanning, monitoring, all these different parts that maybe the developers aren't focused on, can be incorporated into these recommended paths so that developers know if they deploy their code using a golden path, that it's going to be supported, that it's going to be secure, and that they know that they've got fewer hurdles to cross to get into production. So, now we get to the critical question. We know developers have lots of choices, and we know that they're trying to do different practices and ways of working. We know that to make their lives easier and reduce cognitive load, We need to offer them a delightful developer experience and some nice golden paths into production. But if we do all of that, that sounds like quite a lot of work. So the real question is, where's all this work going? Where is all this cognitive load sitting? The answer is, sadly, in quite a lot of cases, the platform team. So this team, or teams, are typically responsible for providing that developer experience. But as we've seen, there's so many parts of it, there's so many things that need to be incorporated into the platform that there's a huge cognitive load on that team's plate. Often this is a team that's underinvested in, and yet is responsible for so much value within the business. And if there's people out there telling you that they have a platform that you can buy off the shelf that will solve all of these challenges, if it's big vendor or big cloud provider saying they have the one true platform that will solve all your platform needs, just beware. Because there's a whole conversation we can have about build versus buy. But even if you're buying, it's not going to cover all of the things that your team needs. There is going to be that last 20%, those last things that is bespoke for your business. In Syntasso, we talk a lot about only you can build your platform, but there's the bespoke value that you have that your team needs to curate for you to make it the platform that suits your needs. So, my answer to the question, and my warning, is won't somebody please think of the poor platform engineers who have all this cognitive load on their plate? And my ask for all of you to go back and think about is this. I've done quite a lot of buzzword bingo in the last few minutes, but I'm wondering if there's just another term that we're missing or that we should think about, and that is platform team experience. If everyone's focused on the developer's experience, who's taking care of the platform teams? So, I've got a few links here for reading. I have to do a quick photograph or you'll miss it. But these are some of the reference materials I've used today. If anyone would like to come and chat about any of the things I've talked about, I'll be here the rest of the afternoon. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much.